All right. I hope you all had a safe and happy 4th of July. Oh, man, I had way too many brats. I am now 40% brat. This is COFOH Live Undead. I am your host, Daniel Crosier, and I am joined by the amazing Thane Benson.
Do I have something on my face?
Thane, how are you, sir?
I am good. It's great to see you, Dan.
It's great to see you as well. How have you been holding up?
I've been good. As good as anyone else. I have nothing to complain about. It's funny though, because given the past year and a half, as weird as it's been, I've really missed sort of the convention scene and seeing all the artists I know and all the creatives I know kind of in that community. And so I'm really looking forward to the Colorado Festival of Horror and being able to reconnect with people again in that way.
Oh, that's awesome. We can't wait to see your happy, shiny, smiley face as well. And man, I hope that's your backdrop there, that magical castle. Is that something Harry Potter or what?
I think it's like a Harry Potter knockoff. It was actually a Christmas present for my son. But at the time we were still in lockdown. I was doing a lot of work over Zoom, so I needed a nice Zoom background. So I stole my son's knockoff Harry Potter background.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, what better thing to do than to steal from your kids?
That's what Christmas is all about, right?
That's right. That's great. Thane, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where you come from and how you got into comic books.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from New York State. Not when you say New York, everyone thinks New York City, but I'm from upstate New York, by car about 5 hours north of New York City. But I grew up in this small town called Lansing, right next to Ithaca, New York, which some people are familiar with. Cornell University's there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where I grew up. As far as comics go, I think it was definitely the Sunday comics is what got me into comics originally as a real little kid, reading them in newspapers. And then I was really into Mad Magazine at one point. That was a big deal to me, Mad Magazine. And I really loved it. Sergio Aragonés, all that stuff was very important to me. I would draw that all the time. I was always drawing, kind of copying Mad Magazine. And then my first actual comic book that I bought, I remember going to the grocery store, little local grocery store where I buy Mad Magazine, and there wasn't a new one that month. My mom's like, "Oh, just pick something from the comic book rack." So I looked through the rack, and I remember the comic I picked was Wolverine #8. So that was my first official comic book that I bought. There it is. Beautiful issue by, let's see, it's John Buscema, I believe, is the artist. Al Williamson, I think, is the inker, if I'm remembering right. Wow. But yeah, I loved that comic. And then I was completely devoted to Wolverine, and then X-Men kind of through Wolverine. And then I kind of, broadened my horizons from there, read all kinds of comics. I was definitely way into comics during the Image explosion when that happened in the early 90s. And Spawn. And I was a big fan of Spawn, which was cool because I eventually, worked for Todd McFarlane very briefly, but I did work at McFarlane Toys.
Yeah, you sent over some photos of some of the things that you worked on. Yeah, tell us a little bit about this guy. It looks like a Cenobite.
That's exactly what it is. But when I was working on it, we referred to it as Cenobites. But I think for legal reasons, they changed the name because Todd was working with Clive Barker.
Oh, okay.
Clive Barker gave the rights for the Cenobites, but I think Hellraiser himself is owned by someone else. With movies, it's very complicated who owns what. Yeah. So we were going to do these Cenobites, and then at the last minute, they're like, no, we own the name Cenobite too. So it became Tortured Souls was the line. Clive Barker's Tortured Souls. But yes, it is the Cenobites from the Hellraiser franchise, which I was completely unfamiliar with when I worked at McFarlane Toys, but I got to sit and watch a bunch of the movies while being paid. So that was pretty cool. I got to watch a bunch of the Hellraiser movies. Nice. So I should say I was in the painting department at McFarlane Toys, so I didn't sculpt this.
Okay.
you know, they broke it up into different departments, but this is one of the figures that I got to paint, which was fun because it's all like leather and metal and gore. It was very, very fun to paint, kind of gross, but very fun to paint for sure.
Yeah, it's really cool. I remember the Tortured Souls line when that came out, and you know how detailed that was.
Mm-hmm.
The painting of these, you know, it's so meticulous because, you know, up until that point, like, and it's articulated. It's like an action figure, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, but at the same time, it's very statuesque. It was this interesting, you know, cross section. I think for collectors.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think that's something Todd definitely brought to it. I think Todd was very into like the posability of the sculpture. Like he was more into like the idea of a sculpture that was like in a cool pose.
Right.
But as far as like toy collectors go, they love articulation. That was a big deal. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what McFarlane Toys did really well, where like they looked really cool, but then they still moved. You could still get them to do stuff.
And you know the sculpting is incredibly detailed, but the paint job is just meticulous, you know, as well. You don't see that with too many other, like, you know, for example, an action figure like something like He-Man, or even going as small as you know, Kenner's Star Wars line. It's like, you know, it's very opaque, and there's the hair, there's the eyebrows, and that's about it. You know?
Yeah, it's interesting because so it could have, this was several years ago, could have changed by now. But when I was at McFarlane Toys, there was like 3 people in the painting department, and I was the third one. I was the low man on the totem pole. But what it was is they would sculpt them, and they would sculpt them twice up the action figures. So if it was a 6-inch action figure, it would be 12 inches, and we would paint the twice up ones, and we would paint 2 of them. And one would be the model that they would photograph for promotions, like what you're seeing now is from there was also a photography department of 2 people at McFarlane Toys when I was there, and they would build these kind of cool little sets and photograph them, and that's the professional photographer that you see there. So that one would be for photos for promotion, and that's what you'd see like on the back card of the toy and stuff. And one would get sent to China, where it would then be mass produced.
Right.
So the toys I painted weren't the same ones that people opened up and played with, or you know, kept mint in their box, didn't play with. Those were mass produced in China. And the head of the paint department actually went to China while I was there, while I was at McFarlane Toys. And she kind of came back and told us like what it was like seeing this. I don't want to get into legal trouble, but maybe a not so great working condition place where like they looked very young. The people painting, they had one brush that they could use with their paints. And she described like while they were painting, you know, this whole room of basically like young Chinese girls painting. And if they like looked up from what they were painting, they got yelled at. So it was very much like get it done. And they did a great job like reproducing on a mass scale, but it's maybe not the most humane work environment.
Oh, geez. That's tough.
Yeah.
You also sent over, you know, Evil Ash from Army of Darkness.
Yes, absolutely. So we did do a lot of horror stuff while I was there. I wasn't there very long. I was only there about a year, but this was maybe my favorite thing that I worked on because, like I said, I didn't know a lot about Hellraiser at the time, but I was a big fan of Army of Darkness and Evil Dead and all that stuff. So I was very excited to work on Evil Ash here, and that was something I took a lot of pride in working on that guy. It was fun doing the gore on his face and everything.
Man,
yeah, that's definitely one of my favorites that I worked on for sure. A lot of them I would do like little pieces of, which was less than exciting. But this one I got to do the whole one, so I was excited about that.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'd imagine you're working with a team of people or, you know, a handful of you know, painters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, it was at the time there was 3 of us. I think it was a 4th guy who came in when we were super busy on a part-time basis. But yeah, we're all kind of around a table painting the stuff, and we'd be watching the movies while we were painting it. So that was fun. Like I said, I got to watch the Hellraiser movies, but I remember watching like I'd never seen a Texas Chainsaw Massacre and like watching that while we're working on the Leatherface doll.
Wow.
I was probably doing like his shoes or something. Like it was rare that I would do a whole one. I think I expressed an interest in Army of Darkness. Like that's like my favorite movie, so they let me do.
Yeah, Army of Darkness is one of my favorite. You know, it's it's very, you know, it's got horror in it and stuff, but it's just more of like this swashbuckling, you know, type, you know, comedy, you know, action comedy of sorts, you know, with supernatural themes. It's so much fun. But, you know, you mentioned Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so I'm a little jealous because that's my favorite horror movie, and it's still one that really upsets me when I watch the original.
It's pretty intense. That is quite the movie.
Yeah,
Sure.
it is. It's very visceral and keeps giving me nightmares. So it's doing something right.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was like the cool stuff that we got to work on. There was a lot of like at least while I was there was a lot of like sports toys and stuff like that. And let me tell you, like painting Evil Ash is so much more fun than painting like the letters on the back of some guy's jersey, like or the numbers on the back of the jersey. That like I was not particularly good at that. I was much better at the gore, which is maybe why I didn't last there very long, because like everyone wanted to do the monsters and the gore. At least in the paint department, people were less excited for the sports toys we were doing at the time. We also did a lot of Shrek was a big property they had while I was there. It's right before the first Shrek movie came out, and that I did a lot of pieces of Shrek things. Very few whole Shrek side.
Were you able to see the film when it,
yeah, it was cool. We saw it like before it was done. So we saw like, it was like the full thing. It was like the full, whatever, however long that movie is, 90 minutes. But some of the animation, it would just be like Shrek posed like this, and he would just go across the screen, like not moving at all. So it was interesting to see, like they had the complete story and they had all the scenes mapped out, but they're still actively working on it while we were doing it.
Okay.
So like the movie is actually way better than I thought it was going to be, because I saw some pretty crappy animation early on, but I guess I don't know a lot about animation, but I guess you do it crappy first and you make it better as you go.
Right. Well, sometimes they're working from animatics and stuff, and they're animating over there. But yeah, it's incredible to see the process, and also like, something like Shrek 20 some odd years ago, right? 20 years ago.
Yeah, this would have been 2000s when I was there, 2000, 2001. Yeah.
I mean, the animation process has really beefed up since then. Things are, both more complicated and much easier at the same time. Yeah, but cool. Let's talk about more of your personal work. I've met you like what, 6 or 7 years ago, maybe, and you've been putting out these amazingly intricate books, stuff around mazes, like I want to say it's your quick series, but I might be mistaken on that.
No, you're right about that. So to kind of put it together, so when I left McFarlane Toys, I kind of didn't leave under the best circumstances, and I kind of left like disenchanted with the commercial art world, if that makes sense. Sure. I still loved art. I still loved doing my own art, but I was like, I don't want it to be my job. So what followed working at McFarlane Toys was kind of a long string of odd jobs while I sort of wandered around. But I was also experimenting a lot with art at then, and I did. That's when I first started writing too, which has become a big part of what I do. Just as important as the drawing and the painting is the writing for me now. Yeah. But at one point I was like, I'm just going to do something that I think is fun, that has no commercial value at all. And I made this like giant post. It ended up being a giant poster, but it was a big drawing of a castle. And at the time, I think I had like 18 by 24 sheets of paper. And I think I taped 6 of them together to make this super tall castle. And I drew this whole castle. And then I drew this little knight guy kind of going through the castle. And he repeated, and it told a story if you followed him as he fought his way through the castle. And people really liked that, and people really responded to it. It took me a long time to figure out like how to print it in a way that was visible, because it was very detailed. At the time, like I said, I drew it in pencil huge, and then I scanned it into my computer. And this was several years ago, and computers weren't quite where they're at now. But I was like digitally inking it, but I kept crashing my computer over and over again because it was so big. Now it wouldn't be a problem, but then it was like a nightmare. So then I had to break it up into tiny pieces and then reassemble them. It was pretty expensive. But I had this little knight guy, I made him up for this poster basically, and he kind of had this sort of like beak helmet face thing, and these 2 feathers coming out of his head. Nice. And he didn't have a name. He was just this knight guy going through a castle. But then years later, he would become Quick the Clockwork Knight. You see him on the bottom left there with his. He still has the beak there and the 2 feathers. And then I started writing comics about him. I was messing around with a lot of different comics, and kind of the official origin of Quick is I was working on this other comic, kind of this film noir sort of comic, drawing lots of like cars and buildings and all kinds of stuff that I don't particularly like to draw. So I was like, this is for the birds. I'm just going to make a comic that's full of stuff I like. So I made like my top 5 list of what I like to draw. And it was like monsters, knights, robots, dragons, and monsters. I think that was the top 5.
That sounds good. Monsters twice. You need that.
They need that for sure. And then so I looked at this list. I was like, this is what I want to draw. Then I was like, well, how about I do a knight who is a robot and he fights monsters and dragons? Cool. And that basically became Quick the Clockwork Knight, which was originally like a comic book proposal. Like I drew all these drawings, I wrote up the story, and I was like sending it to publishers and stuff with little success at the time.
I know that feeling.
But then when he first appeared would be I don't know if people would remember this, but DC Comics did a kind of experiment with web comics in
right.
2000, somewhere in the 2000s, mid to late 2000s maybe. It was called Zuda Comics.
Right.
And basically what happened is kind of web comics were kind of exploding on an indie level at that point. And someone at DC was basically like, let's get in on this. There's some interesting things happening. So they set up a thing, and it was like a monthly competition where you could submit your comic, and if it got accepted, then they did like 10 a month, and people basically voted on them. So I submitted Quick. I like rearranged it as a web comic. It was supposed to be a print comic, and it was 8 pages, and it got into the competition, and that was cool because it got like international exposure, and people dug it. And I almost won. I ended up coming in second. I was in first place kind of right up until the end, and then the number 2 guy passed me. So I did not get the contract with DC. I did get paid to participate, which was cool. And I did get the exposure, which was cool. And then, a few years later, I was like talking to a friend of mine who I actually met through Zuda, kind of through that web comics community. I was talking about sending, proposals different places. And he's like, oh, you don't need a publisher. There's this thing called Kickstarter now. You just do it yourself.
Right.
And so that's basically what I did. I actually started with another comic, which was also a Zuda thing that I did called, I think when it was in Zuda, it was called Az's Inferno, but I renamed it Burnt when I put it on Kickstarter. And that was like my first graphic novel, which was then followed up by Quick, the Clockwork Knight, which has kind of been an ongoing series that I've done different stuff with.
Nice. Yeah. Here's another one of, Quick, and it looks like fighting a dragon.
There he is, Robot Knight and monsters. We got it all there. The good stuff.
As one needs to have. It's so cool. The other thing too is you were sending me over some other artwork. I think what was it? Mistakes.
So
I've never seen from you.
Yeah, so this is something new. We started this talking about how I kind of miss the community of conventions and stuff like that, and meeting other artists. And the last Denver, oh God, what is it? It's Denver. It was Denver Pop Culture Con is what it was called in 2019. I think now it's Fan Expo. It keeps changing, but it was Denver Pop Culture Con in 2019. And I met this guy named Wally, who has a Maze Studio is his company. And he's out of Canada, and they kind of do like fandom prints stuff. Anyone who's been to a big comic convention knows like prints is kind of the big thing. Like you get your print of Deadpool as a Lego action figure or whatever. And he kind of does that stuff, kind of like whatever's popular, but he wants to do, so he sells a lot of prints, and I think he makes a decent living doing it, but he's interested in doing his own original products, his own original comics. So he kind of came by, he saw some of my posters, and he started reading my comics. He bought some of the different quick comics I had. And I think he brought them home and like read them in the hotel that night, and then came back and he like really liked them. He's like, we should work together. And I was like, great, let's work together. That kind of happens a lot at conventions. Different people approach you, and I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And then like nothing happens. But he actually followed up. He followed up with me later, and he's like, I'm developing this superhero property. It's called The Mistakes. And I would like you to write it. And I was like, cool, let's do it. Like I said, writing is just as important to me as drawing. So I was very excited to do some writing, especially if somebody else was paying for it. And so he kind of gave me this outline of this like superhero team. He had like the names and their powers, and he had this very rough idea of like how they met and stuff and how they got their powers. And so I wrote a script to go with it. And I more or less followed what he had. I added a few things, but I was pretty faithful to what he had. And I sent it back to him, and then I heard nothing. I was like, oh, he hates what I did. So this is one paycheck, but that's going to be it. This isn't going to be a relationship. But I think he was just busy because it took him a while to read it. And then he got back to me. He's like, I love it. It's so much better than I thought it was going to be. You improved it so much. And it was great. It really fluffed my ego as a writer. So I was like, great, let's do more. So we've been working on several scripts. And this is the cover to issue 1. And this one I drew. And this is like my zombie variant for the cover. There are no actual zombies in this specific book, but we do have those characters who get their superpowers, and it's kind of like X-Men. They're like young people who get their powers, but they're like terrible at being superheroes. They're trying, but they're like awful, and they're petty and stupid, and they mess up, and it's a comedy. It's kind of like Family Guy meets X-Men is how I've been describing it.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Cool. Yeah, with the zombies, of course. I read in there. Oh, it's very horror, related and stuff.
The cover is
right.
So after he really liked the first issue, I was like, oh, I'm just going to write whatever I want for the second one. So the second one actually is a little more horror based. It's kind of like a Godzilla type story. There it is, Bugzilla.
Nice.
And it's about like a giant bug that attacks New York City. So that one's really fun. It was really fun because I just kind of like went for it. I was like, oh, he likes what I'm doing. I'm just going to do what I want and not pay any attention to his outline at all. I put a few things in that he mentioned, but I was like, I'm just gonna do what I want and see what happens. And he liked it. So it's actually been a really, really fun professional relationship working with them. It's been really great. They've really like all kind of what I think of as my own weird eccentricities they've embraced, and it's become part of the comic. So it's been really great.
Cool. Is this available already?
So you can read it on Webtoons. If you go to Webtoons and Shirts and Mistakes, awesome. you can see it there. The issue 1 is out as a print issue. If you go to mazestudio.ca, because it's Canada.ca, I think you can order issue 1 there. Issue 2 is coming out soon. In fact, this is the cover to issue 2, and I think there might be a Kickstarter for it later this month or maybe next month. So this one's coming soon, the Bugzilla story, which I'm very proud of.
That's cool.
You can read part of the Bugzilla storyline is on Webtoons right now, so you can read it. There's a bunch there.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah. I saw that cover. I thought it was just absolutely spectacular.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I can see. You love drawing monsters, so I can't. Yeah, you were mentioning too, like how prints and fan art, tends to be a big thing at comic book conventions, and now I'm like thinking, it's like, I'd love to see your pantheon of Godzilla kaiju creatures and and Gamera.
Yeah, I should do that. Like it's funny because I sell prints too because that's what people buy. I don't do a lot of like existing properties. I think the only like fandom character I've ever done is Edgar Allan Poe. I have an Edgar Allan Poe print where he's a zombie and there's a raven like eating his eyeball or something.
Nice.
That's maybe the only recognizable character I've ever done. The rest is just my own weird crap that I like.
Nice. Well, back to quick the Clockwork Knight. You've got a new Kickstarter, and for everybody out there, it's streaming down below. Yeah. So not right now, but after this, make sure you go and check it out. But tell us a little bit about the new project.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've done several quick books. I kind of did the original mini series. Then I did a Choose Your Own Adventure book that was very popular, and I kind of followed it up with the Choose Your Own Adventure graphic novel that did really well. And now my latest one is a 3D book, so a 3D comic special, I should call it. It is like a floppy comic, but it is in 3D with it'll come with like the retro red blue glasses, and it'll work. The 3D will come out. Nice. I've seen a lot of people attempt 3D, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I'm speaking of comic book shows. The last one I think I went to before COVID hit would have been SPX, the Small Press Expo, which is out of Bethesda, Maryland. This would have been like the end of 2019. It was the last show I went to. Nice. And I met a guy there who came up to me. He's like, oh, I bought. It was one of the quick books. I forget which one, but he had bought it on Kickstarter. And I was like, oh, cool. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for supporting it. And he was an artist too, and a writer too. And he had his own little book under his hand, and he wasn't saying anything about it. But I was like, oh, what's that? Let me see your thing. And he handed it to me. And he's like, oh, it's a 3D book. And I was like, cool, let me see. And I opened it up, and it worked. It was like the best indie 3D book I've ever seen. Like the stuff really came at you and really receded. And I was like, how did you manage this? Because like I've seen so many people attempt it, and it doesn't quite work most of the time, or sort of works. And he kind of figured it out where it's like one thing to get it to work on the screen, but to get it to work in print is a separate thing.
Yeah.
And it's really, I mean, it's not that complicated, but it's really like working with the printer and really testing it and adjusting the ink levels on the cyan and the magenta and really getting it at that optimal level where it does it the best. And he found a printer who worked with him who was constantly putting the glasses on and checking the print runs to see what they looked like. So he had an amazing 3D book. So I was like, I want to work with you. Let's do a 3D book together.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, there's a guy's named Jeff Weber. His comic was called The Scientists. I'm sure it's out there on the internet if you check it out. Jeff with a G, Geoff Weber. Yeah, so he's been helping me with the 3D stuff, which has been cool. Like we hooked up at one point. I was like, let's do this together. You know, what would make it worthwhile? And I was willing, you know, to pay him or whatever to make it work. And he's like, let's just like trade. Like I help you with this project and you help me with another project. So I was like, cool, let's do it. That sounds great. So I've been doing the art. So I've been drawing it, and I've actually been drawing it on different levels because it's digital. Because I want this level to go back and this level to pop out, and then I just send it to him, and he does the kind of the separations.
Cool.
And he makes the 3D magic happen, which is cool. So I'll send him the file, then I'll come back, and I get to look at it on the screen with my glasses and be like, all like, wow. The first one he sent me, I put my glasses on, and it was like a mess. It was like terrible. I was like, what is going on? And then I realized I had the glasses on backwards. So if you wear the glasses backwards, like what's supposed to pop out, the speeds and so forth. So I was like, this guy doesn't know anything. Then I was like, oh, I don't know how to put on these glasses.
Remind me never to see a 3D movie with you.
Yeah. So it's very important. The red needs to be on the left side.
Okay.
Otherwise, it doesn't work as intended.
Wow, it's interesting that you know there's a science to it, of course, and it's I'm so glad that you guys have the patience to be able to do do the trial and error stuff, because that has got to be painstaking. I've got friends that have done 3D stuff, and yeah, it's hit and miss. Half the stuff ends up being a miss. It's always an interesting endeavor, but man, I applaud you for that type of work. It's man, yeah, that sounds really awesome and aggravating all at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely requires patience and attention to detail, and you have to have a printer who's willing to work with you.
Yeah,
but yeah, we're putting the work in. It's gonna work. I promise. It'll look great. It looks great so far. The tests I've done.
Nice. We're getting a few comments coming in. So somebody named Emily Rose with some other guy's image says hi.
Hi, Emily.
Mark says hi, y'all. He's a fan of horror and everything. He's been popping in for the last couple of weeks.
Hey, Mark. Hey, there's Wally.
Yeah. Thane is the man. So that's pretty awesome. So
Wally's the head of Maze Studio that I was just talking about. I was telling the story.
Fantastic.
That we met up at Denver Comic Con back in the day. So so we're working on lots of stuff together. So there's going to be more coming from us relatively soon.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to see more of what you guys are doing. I can't wait to see the new Clockwork book. What's it like working with all these different collaborators? It sounds like you're juggling quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean it's good. It's really fun. Like working with Wally at Maze Studio has been great because it's so much fun to like write something and not have to draw it. It's been so great. And because I do, like, when I'm writing for myself, I definitely like I said, like, only try to write things that I like to draw. Yeah. Like you won't see any kitchens in any scenes that I have to draw or anything like that. So and what's also great about kind of working with other people is seeing like different interpretations, because I'll describe a scene and I'll write fairly detailed what's going on, but still they'll like surprise me with like the angle or something. They'll just do it in a way that I wouldn't do it, and that's really cool to see other artists kind of interpret what you do. Has been really fun. Dan is the artist on the mistakes, whose last name I forget at the moment, but But his art style is really cool, and it's really bouncy and kind of animated. I mentioned the Family Guy before. I think it kind of draws from that strongly. It kind of looks like that. It looks like a cartoon, which is cool.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, to see Dan's art come back, like based on my script, has been so great and so rewarding. And it's great working with Wally because he's basically the editor. So like, it's not on me to fix everything, and Wally really does the hard work as far as like making everything, correcting my spelling mistakes and stuff like that. Has been really fun.
Cool.
So yeah, it's really great to do both sides, where like kind of Quick is my own thing that I own, that is just my own thing, and no one else really has input on it. I have worked with colorists and stuff in the past, which has been great too. My good friend Jeff Waschenberger colored the Pyramid of Doom special, which was my first choose your own adventure.
I love Jeff. He's a great guy. He's really talented.
Yeah. And he definitely brought a lot to it. But these days, like, I'm kind of coloring everything myself. And also after having him do it and do kind of that heavy lifting for me for a little bit with the color, I was like, okay, I'm going to try it now. And yeah, so it's fun to kind of have both, to kind of have like your thing that you control, that no one else can mess up or make better, frankly. And then it's also great to be able to rely on other talented people to do something, that's more than just what I can do.
Nice. And with the new Clockwork Knight in 3D, what's the story there? What's that about?
Yeah, so it kind of starts off. There's like the the clocksmith is the guy who built Quick the Clockwork Knight, and he's like this little monkey guy who's an inventor who can invent stuff. So it's him and the Clockwork Knight kind of hanging out, and he's working on this like new invention, and the Quick the Clockwork Knight's like, I don't know if this is such a good idea. He's like, maybe you shouldn't be messing with the time-space continuum. Like, this always goes bad. And the scientist is like, no, it's going to be great. It's going to work great. And he's building a time machine. And then, of course, things do not go right. There's kind of a big explosion. They got kind of launched back in time is what happens. Actually, I should say launched outside of time. They kind of end up in sort of like this Twilight Zone area. I was just looking. I have art of it here. I don't know how well it would show up on the screen, but anyways, so they're kind of outside time and they're stuck and they have a broken time machine, and basically they're trying to fix the time machine. And so Quick kind of goes on this adventure through time, hopping through different periods in time, kind of collecting pieces to put the time machine back together. So there they are in prehistoric times, monster prehistoric times, I should say. So he's chasing after this bat that has a piece of the time machine. So there's a lot of fun, like kind of like big detailed art like this, but it's also a little bit of a game where you're searching for the bat who has there's a reason there's so many bats. You're searching for the one little bat that has the one little piece of the machine that he needs to fix it.
It's kind of like a Where's Waldo type thing, huh? Yeah,
absolutely. Here they are in the future. This is like the Mad Max future.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
I don't know if you remember Stephen Platt, but I was definitely looking at some Stephen Platt images with the bullet shells everywhere, trying to emulate that. And this one's going to be great in 3D. Because all those bullet shells are going to fly in your face. It's going to be awesome.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. And then this looks like what is it? Some Western undead.
Yeah, it's the Wild West with zombies.
That's
why not?
That's very historical. I think that's very accurate.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, absolutely.
My God, with your work, it's so detailed. I remember some of your earlier work with the castle, and then working on like kind of mazes and everything like that. I mean, it's so intricate and so detailed oriented. How long does it take you to produce like a piece like this?
It's funny. This took way longer than I thought it was going to be, because as I was describing before, I drew things on like different levels because I wanted them to pop, or different layers, I should say, in the final Photoshop file. So that was actually super labor intensive because I was like, oh, it won't be a big deal. I'll just skip between the different layers while I'm drawing. But then to like go back and like color within the layer, and only that, or I should say gray tone, because it's very purposely in black and white, because it pops better with the 3D effect works much better with black and white. Like you can do color, but if you venture into anything that's close to blue or close to red, it messes it up. So greens work just fine, but like any other color will screw the whole thing up. So I was like, oh, we'll just keep it black and white. Then it'll really pop and we won't have any problems. And it also won't just be like solid green, which would be kind of weird.
Right. Yeah.
We'll do something with the color. There'll be like greens and yellows on the color, because the cover, excuse me, because I do want the cover to be 3D too, and I do want it to be in color, but I don't want to screw it up. So it'll be a very limited palette on the cover.
Yeah. Oh, that'll be pretty interesting. Is you still have yet to work on the cover? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I have it here. It's not done, but I do have it drawn, and it's very, very much drawn to to be in 3D. It's quick on the back of a dragon, and the dragon's like breathing fire, and the fire's going to be like coming right at you. It's
going to be like Friday the 13th in 3D.
In 3D, yeah. And the dragon kind of goes back, and then the background is all very much going back behind you. So we're really trying to push the 3D elements as far as we can on the cover.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, how appropriate too. I mean, it's for the most part, the Clockwork Orange isn't necessarily horror or anything, but your style lends itself to that genre very well. But also that 3D element just reminds me of all those those cheesy 1980s 3D movies like Friday the 13th 3D or Amityville 3D or Jaws 3D. Yeah,
absolutely. And we started this conversation talking about Evil Dead and Army of Darkness, and that's definitely horror, and it's definitely got monsters, but it's also kind of funny, right, at times, and very playful. And I do think that's a good analogy to the type of work I do. Is very much along the lines of something like Army of Darkness, where I like gore and I like scary stuff and teeth and everything, but I also like silly things and things that are fun and playful.
Yeah, horror comedies are just such an easy way to unload. It's wonderful escapism without having to deal with the realities of the world, like what you see in torture porn or something like that.
Right.
So, why not inject that fun in your comics? I think that's brilliant. And if you like it, somebody out there is going to be loving it as well. So that's really cool. You mentioned it takes a long time doing this. While you're working away at your studio, are you still putting on the movie while you're working, just as you would in McFarlane Toys?
Yeah, I don't. I know lots of people do that, who watch movies while they draw and stuff. I can't quite hack that, because I just look at the movie a lot, even if I go back and forth. Sometimes I do a lot of work on an iPad, iPad Pro with a pencil, and sometimes I'll, with my family or whatever, we'll sit down and we'll watch a movie, and I'll try and draw at the same time, and I get nothing done, or I get very little done. In the 2 hours we're watching this movie, it's probably 15 minutes worth of focused drawing. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I do love audiobooks. I listen to a lot of audiobooks and music while I work and stuff like that, for sure.
Nice. My girlfriend does the same thing. She'll write and write books, or do a lot of her day work and listen to audiobooks, as well as tons of music as well. So that's something I've been trying to revisit in my own work too. Is less TV, more music and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I find I get a little bit more of a jolt doing that, and it's kind of euphoric. And then all of a sudden, the day's gone completely by, and but you've gotten a lot of work done. So kudos. That's awesome if you're able to do that.
Yeah, podcasts are good too. I listen to a lot of podcasts while I work too.
What's what sort of audiobooks are you listening to, or podcasts too?
Yeah, so audiobooks kind of all over the place. Whatever strikes my fancy or whatever I hear is good. Deacon King Kong is a book I'm listening to right now. I wish I could tell you the author off the top of my head. It's funny when you listen to something you don't a book you're looking at all the time, and I feel like you see the author's name every time you open the book. With the audio, I just hit play and I forget who's writing the book. But Deacon King Kong's pretty great. It's pretty wild. It's it takes place, I think it's New York City, but it's kind of like inner city New York City, and kind of starts with a shooting or a failed shooting, depending on how you look at it. The guy survives the shooting, but it's kind of what's going on in this neighborhood, and it's all the weird characters in this neighborhood and how they're all intertwined. And then the police come in, and the police are characters too, and kind of how they interact with the people in the neighborhood. It's good. It's very interesting. It's very much kind of its own thing. It's hard to compare it to something else. Like sort of like Boys in the Hood, but like way
Okay.
funnier than Boys in the Hood.
Right.
Is how I would describe it.
Nice. That's cool. What kind of podcasts are you listening to?
I listen to like comic book podcasts. I like a lot. I listen to a lot of Word Balloon is one I like. That's pretty well known. I listen to Cartoonist Kayfabe is one I like a lot that I discovered during COVID. That's a pretty fun one.
I'll catch them on YouTube every now and
then.
Yeah,
I know they do the video show too. Yeah, I think it's primarily the video show, and I listen to like the audio version of it because they're constantly referring to stuff they're seeing. And I'm like, I can more or less picture what they're saying or what they're referring to. That's one I like a lot. Then I like kind of like the NPR stuff, like Wait, Don't Tell Me, I'll listen to, or stuff like that.
Oh yeah, those are fun.
Or This American Life, stuff like that. Yeah, for sure.
Nice. That's cool. It's got to be when you're sitting there working on it, like initially, what's your creative process? Like, do you work from the script, or you being the creator, do you just go straight into drawing and then work a story around it?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the project, but I mostly start with writing. And so like writing, I kind of do like all the time, like I'm thinking about it all the time, and then like every now and then I'll write a little bit. So I do it. So I'm thinking about whatever project I'm working on, and I'll write it out something. So yeah, it starts with writing. Almost everything starts with writing, even if it's like even if it's something that's like primarily visual. I'm trying to think of a good example. Like before I ever draw anything, I'll like write it down. I was like, this would look cool, like giant castle with guy going through it. Like that'll usually start as like just a few sentences even before I draw it. And so I write a lot of stuff, and I'm constantly like, I have like a list of I have a lot of projects I work on at the same time. And I have like a list, I keep it in my email because I pop it up and look at it all the time. And I have a list of like current projects, and I move them around in ranking and as to what I want to work on or what I'm hoping to get done whenever. So I have like a long list of kind of like crazy stuff. And at some point I'll be like, I'm going to finish this. Because a lot of stuff gets written and then just kind of sits for a long time. But then I don't know when it's time I get around to it, or something will spark me, like like bumping into Jeff Weber in person, who I talked about earlier, being like, we should do a 3D comic book together. Then I like dug up this 3D script I had that was very rough of the Clockwork Knight thing. That was just, it wasn't even when I finish something, it's like page and it's broken down by panel, like a comic book type thing. It's a very sort of detailed script, but I'd gotten excited about 3D something at some point, and I'd written just like, this page, this should happen, and this page, this should happen. It would be cool if this happened. Like it was very short, the original script. I was like, oh wow, I thought this was much more detailed. But then I kind of went back through and kind of actually broke it down and worked on the story a bit more and added stuff and whatnot. Yeah, so then I write, and I typically like print out my script and do like little thumbnails, like right in the script, right next to the text, just little tiny drawings of what I think each page is going to be. And then I'll eventually scan those in and kind of blow them up. And I know you do comic book stuff too, Dan. Do you have trouble keeping stuff in boxes when you're like drawing it? Because I'm terrible at that.
Oh, I actually don't. I'll sit there, whatever script comes across, or if I'm writing, I'll write to my strengths. But if I'm working with somebody else, I gotta, try and work to theirs. But I'll sit there and figure out what the flow is, and how things should fit, and then it's just up to me to make it work. So that might mean that I have to do a couple of revisions, but I don't particularly find that hard. It just means I've got to do a little bit of cleanup. It's when I lay down my ink, because you've seen how many lines I also like to do too, and for me that's when it's permanent, and that's when it's done. And then if I have to go back and do a revision, then that's when it feels like labor intensive.
Okay. Yeah, because when I'm doing like thumbnails, and thumbnails, for people who don't know, are like this big, oriented, this big, like not very big and not very good drawings, but just kind of breaking down what's on the page. But like my stuff goes out of the borders all the time. So so I was just saying that because when I scan in, and there's a lot of like rearranging and shrinking and expanding to make everything fit on a page, because I'm just
Wow.
In the rough stages, I'm just not good at fitting things. So I always marvel at other artists I see who do like little thumbnails and everything fits in the little boxes. I'm like, how do you do that? Because my stuff, yeah, it's just a mess. So I scan it in, I kind of fix it up. And again, it's very, very rough at this point, but I try to add text as early as possible because stuff in a script you think will take up so much space ends up taking up so much more. And you'll have to like either rewrite it or redo the image. So I put like word balloons in immediately, even when it's these little crappy stick figure drawings that I'm doing to just kind of help me figure out how it's all going to fit.
Okay.
And then basically I print it out and I draw over it and then I'll scan it in and mess it up some more and print it out and draw over it again. And that'll go on and on and on until I'm more or less happy with it. And then I'll ink it. And then, then it's more or less done.
Nice. That's awesome. So many of your projects and your working relationships, seem to come from doing events, doing conventions and stuff like that. And you yourself, you organize an event usually every November at the public library in Aurora. Or in Denver, I should say.
In Denver, yeah, with Denver Public Library. We called it Mini Comic-Con. We didn't do it in 2020 for obvious reasons. But yeah, we did it maybe like 4 years in a row before that. Yeah, and that was kind of like my little show that I did. It was fun because you meet a lot of people doing conventions, especially, I live here in Denver, so I meet a lot of people at local conventions here. And you form these friendships. And like I talked about at the very beginning, I do absolutely miss seeing these people, but it's fun to kind of build those relationships, and it's fun to have like a little show and gather people. And be excited about art together. I guess that's what's great about
right. Find that thing that you love together and pretty much unite in support of it. That's always something that's wonderful, and it's been missed for the last year, and hopefully we'll be able to get back into more of that. And I know some of our friends decided to sit out this year just to play it safe and completely understandable. But that is also something that I also miss. Yeah, broken leg or not.
Yeah. Yeah. So if anyone's watching this who like is into creative stuff, is trying to figure out how to do it, going to any sort of convention is great. Any comic book convention, any horror convention, anything like that is great. And meeting people is great. And it definitely helps.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. Networking is a fantastic thing. And the other thing too is like, there's so many wonderful tutorials right now online on how to do different things, different techniques, whatever you want to learn. And now everybody's pretty much available at unless you're a hermit, a complete hermit, completely off the grid, devoid of any internet, let alone maybe you got your own generator and that's all you've got. But yeah, it's almost anybody is reachable, in terms of like, hey, I want to do this. Do you have any recommendations? Seeking out other people's wisdom and insight and stuff. And I always think, with the way that you work out on things, you always have, something cool to share and to showcase, how you did this and everything. We should probably sign you up for, some type of art panel too on meticulous, comic book making.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm ready.
Excellent. Well, I will email you, about that. But for everybody, that is tuning in, make sure after this broadcast to go to the Kickstarter, to Thane's Kickstarter, and the link is scrolling down at the bottom. So make sure you copy and paste that and put that in your browser, and go contribute. And make sure you collect an amazing piece of art, 3D art coming right at you.
Yeah, and I should say, if you're interested in any of my other books I talked about, Burnt, or any of the other quick books and whatnot, you can get all that through this Kickstarter too. So if you're interested in any of my work, it's all available through this Kickstarter.
Wow, that's awesome. So guys, make sure you go over there and support this amazing artist and his collaborators, in these wonderful endeavors. They're absolutely fantastic. Looks like Dave just chimed in. Hi, y'all. And
Hi, Dave.
Mika is Thane is awesome to see your work grow and progress.
Thanks for checking in, Mika.
So cool. Well, Thane, it was great having you on the show. Really appreciate you, coming on and being so generous with your time and sharing, your work and stuff and chatting it up and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we go, I like I mentioned, I wasn't at McFarlane Toys very long, but I do have one really good story from McFarlane Toys, and it's a little spooky, so I think it's appropriate. So I just want to share, this is my best McFarlane toys story. So when I was there, we were working on a Jerry Garcia toy.
Oh,
It's like Jerry Garcia, kind of like old man Jerry Garcia singing. He was definitely already dead at this point. Yeah. Which is important to the story. So anyway, we were working on this toy. You can Google it; it'll pop up. It's Jerry Garcia with a guitar with like a giant tombstone behind him or something like that. I think I painted the tombstone. You know what? I might have painted his like microphone or something really not exciting like that. But anyway, when you do the toys and there's like and somebody owned Jerry's estate, which I think is his widow, I think kind of owns his estate, so she would have to like approve the likeness and everything, and they would send different photographs to her at the time to get approval. When it was in the sculpture stage and when it was in the painting stage and so on and so forth, she would have to approve all these things. And this is what we did for any sort of likeness toy we did or whatever kind of thing that somebody owned. But the ones for Jerry Garcia always took a really long time to come back, whether it was okay or not. And we were always like waiting and waiting and waiting. And then finally it was like, okay, this is okay, or change this, or da-da-da. And at one point someone asked, like, why is it taking so long to get a response from this woman? And so they finally got an answer. And what it was is every time she would get a photograph of whatever of the toy in progress, she would go to her psychic medium and they would contact Jerry's ghost, and Jerry's ghost would decide if the toy was appropriate or not. So if you have the McFarlane Toys Jerry Garcia toy, you can rest assured that Jerry's ghost approves of that toy.
Nice. Oh, that's hilarious. It's Poltergeist approved. Yeah. Hopefully he wasn't a poltergeist. I mean, that'd be pretty freaky.
It'd be cool if he inhabited the toy, though. How awesome would that be?
That's true. Maybe a little bit of his spirit inhabits every Jerry Garcia toy. Oh, I wonder if he inhabits Cherry Garcia.
Now that's frightening.
Yeah.
Think about that.
It's like, oh, this is extra creepy. Oh, it's got a little bit of his soul in there. Thanks, Ben and Jerry. Oh, right on. Thanks again, Thane. Oh, geez, you get some more comments coming in. Rima says, hi, cousin.
Hello, cousin.
And then, David, great story thing. So, yeah, man, well, you got your fans on here, so that's pretty awesome. But thanks again, sir, and stick around for a few minutes while we sign off. But for everybody that tuned in, thanks so much for tuning in, and also, thanks to Hellfire Entertainment for supporting us on your social media, and of course our friends at Mutiny Information Cafe. If you're going to start a revolution, make sure you're caffeinated. And to everybody out there, hope you had a wonderful, safe 4th of July weekend. And remember, to stay safe, help each other out, and remember that we love you. Have a good night. Take care.
Thanks for checking out the video, everyone.
Yeah, go check out the Kickstarter.